soft skills, right? What role do they play? How durable are they in a future with AI?
Oh, so this is the topic that where my heart really beats, right?
Yeah.
So I'm all in on. I do. I know a lot of people are saying no. I think you're kind of of the opposite opinion, but so yeah, openness, of course, openness to experience was one of them. But so was, and this one drove me crazy, was extroversion.
Wow.
Like what? But if you think about it, people who kind of love the buzz of new and novel environments, whether they're interpersonal, human, or experiential, tend to do well.
So I know we mentioned, global mobility and expats earlier in the conversation. It seems like that trend is like, I don't know, maybe it was COVID that killed it a little bit or something. I don't know, but it doesn't seem like that is as prevalent now as it used to be. Do you think that that might be a contributing factor to lower trust as well?
I mean, the individuals who were great at being
Hmm.
expats, and not all of them were great at being expats, but those who were great.
Welcome to Directionally Correct, a people analytics podcast with your host, Cole Napper, and today's guest, Paula Caligiuri, distinguished professor at Northeastern University, co-founder of Skillify, best-selling author, and podcast host of International Business Today. Hey, Directionally Correct fans, this podcast is dedicated to you to help educate and entertain you on how to effectively bring workforce intelligence and AI into the workplace. If you're looking to stay connected to the podcast, make sure to subscribe to Directionally Correct Substack newsletter, watch videos on Spotify or YouTube, or listen to the podcast on your app of choice. If you're looking to build up your skills this year, sign up for the Data Driven HR Academy at datadrivenhracademy.com, where you'll learn key concepts from Cole's book, People Analytics. And if you're looking to hear from Cole directly, reach out to him at colenapper.com. As always, all opinions are our own, and thanks for being a listener. So, Paula, what is adaptability and why is it important at the moment that we're in right now?
Well, actually, I don't talk about adaptability. I talk about agility, like
Agility,
cultural.
sorry.
No, it's okay. Like, adaptability is a big piece of it. Like, how do people adjust to being in a different context that's not one that they're
Sure.
familiar with? But it's one piece of it, right? So there's sometimes you do it the way others do it. There's sometimes you have to hold your standard. And then there's another time when you kind of have to create a new standard, like create a cultural norm. So adaptability, kind of doing it your way, our way,
Yeah.
and
Well,
your
what
way.
kind of skyrocketed that concept into prominence, though? Like, like, give us maybe the lineage of it a little bit.
Sure. So, I mean, my background was always on, expats, people who lived and worked in other
Mhm.
countries. And kind of post 9/11 reality, it was companies saying, hey, look, we're not sending people internationally. We have a moratorium on that. Let's go ahead and talk about different ways to build and develop. And what we were finding was that like the people who were great at just being in a multicultural environment had a certain set of skills.
Mhm.
Um, and so it was people who were going into novelty, people who were coming back, and working in different cultural contexts, people who were on global teams, people who were having to work across professional lines, people who were having to work cross generationally.
From like a personality standpoint, are we just thinking they're high openness to experience, or is it some other kind of concoction of things?
Yeah, do Cole, that was my dissertation,
Oh, really?
personality predictors of expat success back in the 90s. And so yeah, openness, of course, openness to experience was one of them. But so was, and this one drove me crazy, was extraversion.
Wow.
Like what? But if you think about it, people who kind of love the buzz of new and novel environments, whether they're interpersonal, human, or experiential, tend to do well. And we learn from being around others. That's how we become good at this. So
And are
Yeah.
you still studying expats? Is that like a hot topic right now or not?
Oh, expats aren't a hot topic anymore. It evolved. It really evolved. It was moving from working in, about people who were
Mhm.
going abroad to kind of thinking about those who just have to work it outside of their own context. So I still study primarily culture, but
Yeah.
it's moved into people who are moving from one company to another or kind of one professional area to another, changing careers, changing professions, anything that puts us in novelty, humans in novelty. That's kind of my thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've got your own podcasts, and so are these some of the topics that you cover in respect to international business on the podcast?
The podcast is International Business Today.
Hmm.
We need to get you on the show to talk
Hey,
about,
we've got to make it happen.
absolutely, to talk about fault lines, because that to me is going to be really, really important. But we talk about really anything that touches international business, and
Mhm.
human talent is a piece of it. But we have people on there talking about lots of different things related to international business.
Well, you chaired the recent, I mean, recent being relative, but I mean, it just came out. Org Dynamics episode, or why am I struggling with this? The series of articles, a special edition issue of Org Dynamics, and talking about kind of global talent practices. How did that come to be? And I'd love to hear, your synopsis, because you actually kicked it off with, I thought was a really good article, the global talent in the era of disruption, which is like, oh, my ears perked up when I heard that. So can you give us kind of the overview of that?
Yeah, I can give you a short history of that,
Yeah.
and I'll kind of skip some of the details. But so Gary Latham was the editor at the time, and we were at an event at the Academy of Management. And he said, "Hey, Paula, I need you to, you know, come up with a special issue on global talent." And I went, "Okay, yeah, Gary, absolutely, we'll do this." And I just figured he'd forget about it. I didn't have time for it. Fast forward to PSYOP, I was on an elevator, and who walks in the elevator but Gary? And he looked at me and goes, "You owe me a special issue." It's like, okay, all right, got to get
Yeah.
serious about this. So, we put out the call and ended up, I mean, really, it was the idea of let's put together an issue that is hitting the things that we believe will be the next generation of challenges.
Hmm.
And so it actually hit a bunch of topics from, virtual teams, leadership issues, workforce analytics,
Yeah.
as Mark Huslett and Donovan Vieva's articles
Hmm.
had. We had things on skills first, but we covered a variety of topics. A lot of those articles are open access, so I'd recommend it if anyone's interested.
Yeah, we'll definitely try to include a kind of a link to the special issue website for
Yeah,
anybody who wants to go look at that. But I did want to dig into yours really quickly, if you're okay with that. Um,
sure.
because you talked about a few topics, which will actually tee up probably some other things I want to dig into here. So, one, you talked about the shifting paradigm from rigid roles to flexible skill based capabilities. And then you also talked about, harnessing technology in global talent management as well, which are two of the other articles I wanted to bring up here. But how do you see those playing a role as the world, you're in an era of disruption, whether it's AI or it's geopolitics or what have you? How is that disrupting global talent at the moment?
Yeah. I mean, Cole, you're probably closer to the expert on this than I certainly am. I was just, the role of being editor is you get to learn a lot, but you're not really the expert on this. So I'd
Hmm.
actually kind of turn this back on you. What I learned from my colleagues who were writing in that area is saying, look at a lot of organizations are going to need to buy the skills that they need
Yeah.
in real time, and and we keep talking about that tighter alignment with strategy. The other piece, kind of big, and one that I know you care about deeply, is
Hmm.
this, like, really, let's get serious about what AI can do,
Yeah.
and really, come on, what it's not going to be able to do. So I think about it, and I think they sort of highlighted, look at there's some things that are will go, and they probably should have gone. They're probably not great jobs to begin with.
Yeah.
But then there's all these other roles that are going to be AI augmented, and what does that mean from a human capability perspective? Like, what will humans need to do? We're going to have to be better
Yeah.
humans.
Well, let's actually dig into that for a second. Soft skills, right? What role do that they play? How durable are they in a future with AI?
Oh, so this is the topic where my heart really beats, right?
Yeah.
So I'm all in on. I do. I know a lot of people are saying no. I think you're kind of the opposite opinion, but I believe we are going to see a lot of layoffs, just the way jobs are currently constructed, um, due to AI.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that the jobs that are remaining will require us to be ever more human, and that the kind of the ever more human part will be some durable soft skills, some things that you can build and gain, um, like being curious, having a bit of humility to the context that you're in, being relationship oriented, having a tolerance of ambiguity, having some resilience, having perspective taking. These these aren't just personality. You can build some of these skills out and become great at them. And my sense is that for those, and we've done a little bit of research in this, in the tech industry, just that people who will be remaining, they're going to have those tech skills, and they're going to
Yeah.
have the skills they need, but they're also going to be good at these things that are durable.
Well, I mean, you've written books on this topic. I think you've done like a LinkedIn learning course as well. Can you talk about those?
Yeah. So, I mean, the punchline is like, we've gone all in on tech skills for so long,
Mm-hmm.
but tech skills now have a half life of, I mean, in some cases it's 18 months, and I would imagine that's just going to keep getting shorter and shorter as technology advances. Um, but again, it's that kind of what remains, what enables people to go into any new situation.
Mm-hmm.
Back when I started my career, we went to novelty. Now novelty's coming to us, right? So who's good at it? Who like, can handle being in situations of novelty? And it's those people who are great at, the kind of soft skills, like them or hate them, that, um, you know, we keep finding again and again that are effective. The people who are in situations of novelty, complexity, challenge, they're good at. And it goes back to humility, curiosity, perspective taking, resilience. It's the same ones that keep popping up, whether we're talking about tech or global or complexity. Yeah.
And is this what Skillify is building for customers? Because I know one of the things that's so impressive about you, by the way, is like you're just doing so many things. And I so admire people who are doing, like, you're a professor at Northeastern University, you've got your own podcast, you've got your own company, Skillify, you've written multiple best-selling books, and you're just everywhere all the time for everybody. And so can you tell me, like, well, first of all, how do you manage all of that? But second, what is Skillify, and kind of like how does it play a role in terms of this kind of agility, adaptability, soft skills, cultural, resonance that's going on at the moment?
Yeah, thanks. I don't know that I do a lot of things. I actually do one thing, and I just keep repeating it, and I've been repeating it for 32 years. So, um, no, I built Skillify, I co-founded Skillify with, an angel investor who said, Paula, this cultural agility stuff. He's a tech leader, and
Yeah.
he has seen it. Like, we need humans to be better humans, right? So we built Skillify, thankfully, with his assistance, as a public benefit corporation, because his idea was, look, it is so important. We need to get it out there in a really big way. So our primary, um, our primary tool, if you will, is a tool called My Guide, and it just helps people build those soft skills, whether they're, you know, 18-year-old students or 68-year-old executives. It helps humans kind of gain these skills by gamifying how you acquire them.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the Skillify side. It's fun. That's a it's fun. It's fun. I just enjoy it. As an academic, I teach classes that are kind of this space: global leadership, cross-cultural management. I write books on the exact same topic. It all fits in my world. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think it is related though to kind of, you've built a really strong personal brand, and you and I were actually on a session at SIBE last year about personal branding, which I'll share a personal anecdote for a second. That was actually a really seminal moment of my last year because I realized I was doing everything wrong.
Wait a minute, what? You're doing everything right.
Yeah, I was like just doing all these things, but there was like no like strategy or semblance of like a purpose to it. And every other person on that panel like had a very defined purpose. And I was like, wow, I need to have a purpose. And so I had to do this kind of like internal moment of reckoning after that session. But you were excellent. And I feel like you've done an excellent job in this space. For people that are out there that are looking to build a strong personal brand, what are some of the things that they should consider doing?
Wow. Yeah, I'd say know yourself and know what you want to put out on the planet, and then keep putting it out on the planet.
Yeah.
Eventually, someone will pay attention. No, I'm all in on communicating scholarship in an accessible way, trying to get people who care about topics together to talk about them, being accessible. The divide between academics and practitioners drives me crazy. So the more we can be talking to each other, I think that actually feeds into the brand. Unless you want to be, from the academic lens. Again, my background is as an academic. If you just want to be an academic, there's a different way to build your brand as an academic. I personally wanted to build it a little more broadly, so I went more broadly. But I'd say for anyone, it's a pretty simple recipe, right? Know what you want to be out there in the world, know what you want your reputation to say about you, and make sure everything you're doing professionally is consistent with that reputation.
But I think in the past few years, you've been doing some research on what makes people successful, especially within the context of their work. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So years ago, I did a book called "Get a Life, Not a Job." I mean, it was
great title, by the way.
I know, right? I wish I could take credit. I can't. The publisher named it. So just to give you a little of that trajectory, so that it was the "Get a Life, Not a Job" that got me the CNN gig for a segment called "Reclaim Your Career," and I did that for a while. So in terms of branding, that kind of sort of built out that running start on the professional, on the careers piece. And then my angel investor, actually, he's the one who said, Paula, I read your book, and it's kind of missing some things for the reality of careers now. So he and I wrote Live for a Living together. And I think when we think about successful careers, Cole, I'm all in. We've got to self-manage them. We can't sort of hand over our job satisfaction or our state of flow or whatever to an employer. That's got to be ours. So I think we go pretty deep into know yourself well enough to know what you want to derive out of the career that you have. And I get really excited about that. And I love helping people find it. I'm actually going to a coaching license now because I'm so excited about helping people find it.
Well, is your next book going to continue that line of research, or is it going to be on something else?
Well, actually, you knew this. So my next book, I finished it. I'm looking for a publisher for it right now. I'm actually writing a dating book.
There you go.
So I'm 58 now, but at 52, when I started dating again, I realized, hey, this is exactly like being in another country, right? There's now different rules, there's different norms. I remember dating in the 80s and 90s. This is like a completely different reality. There's a different language to it. There's anyhow. So I started actually going back to the literature and trying to understand, well, is there any really good advice on dating? So I was such a nerd. I took the like advice that I was finding in the literature and tried to apply it to the 65 first dates I went on, and it was great. It was really cool. So I dumped that all into a book with, so it's kind of got some science and some
Yeah.
really funny stories, and a lot of tips for women over 50.
I will say dating books, I'm sure, do incredibly well. So I'm sure they might be the most popular thing you've ever done.
Yeah, right. Although, I mean, like I said, I'm still looking for a publisher, so yet to be determined. It might be self-published.
Is there anything like one standout thing that you're like, whoa, that was a really good thing from research about dating? I've never seen any research on dating, so I'm a complete novice in this space. But what, like, have you found anything that you're like, whoa, that's really interesting?
Okay, I'll share something that I think your audience will like. I don't know if this is. I mean, there were a bunch of standouts, but
Sure.
this was kind of a funny one from a nerdy statistical org psych people analytics kind of thing. So classic people analytics strategy. Remember the old 1950s secretary problem that we all learned in our statistics class? Like how many secretaries like again, this is 1950s. How many should you interview before you find the best possible one? And it's 30% of those in the pool, and then you find the next best, right? Just based on normal distribution. It was all that. You could totally apply it to dating. And think about, okay, based on what you're interested in, what's the possible pool, and you go through, blank number. Obviously, again, I didn't go through 30% of all the eligible bachelors in Boston, but you kind of march through a good portion of it until you sort of understand what the range is.
Yeah.
And then either you go and you end up with the next.
This is like a law of large numbers thing going on here or something.
Well, sort of, but it's like, frankly, it was great advice in that until you understand the distribution and the range of the people who are out there. I mean, it's the same thing we would do when we're doing a selection problem. So actually, that's in the book as well,
You could argue it's the most critical selection problem.
right?
There you go. But
Nerdy as it is.
so I think you're based up in the Northeast, but have you recently relocated to Italy, or what's going on there?
Yeah, so I did. I just bought a house in Italy, which was fantastic. It's out in on the island of Sardinia.
Oh wow.
Yeah, really beautiful spot. It's spectacular. It's always been a dream to have one. I'm also trying for dual citizenship, and my immigration attorney had suggested that perhaps it might be a little bit better to state the case if you have a home there. So
Yeah.
someone had to do it. It was really such a hardship.
Someone had to do it, There you go. Well, we talked about earlier, your issue, special issue. I don't know why I'm struggling with that one. In the org dynamics and what's going on. And you mentioned asking about fault lines, which is some research that I've actually got coming out
Yeah.
next week. So by the time this podcast comes out, it'll be live. But on the relationship between global labor market dynamics, and which is kind of the inverse of talent management. So if you think about like talent management is how the organizations, how are they going to utilize their talent internally, whereas labor market dynamics is like what's going on in the entirety of the labor market from a macro sense. And so we're looking at geopolitics, AI disruption, global labor shortages, and within that, like we even made some projections about what the world is going to look like in 2050, which are quite provocative in terms of, like how some professions may rise in stature where others may lower in stature, kind of to your point about layoffs from earlier. But my section was primarily focused on what's going on geopolitically, which, no one's going to be offended by anything that you do in that space. Correct. So we talked about things like, different trading blocks and how there's different talent availability. how things like tariffs may be playing a role, or interest rates, or the availability of higher education, or the quality of that higher education, and then things like how they interplay amongst one another, like how geopolitics and AI are kind of playing a role in building and kind of ping ponging off one another right now. So really fascinating
I can't wait to
research.
read it.
Yeah, and so it'll be out here shortly.
What were some of the things you found? Like
Well,
what were
one of
some
the
of the
things in the geopolitics section, which is kind of like a overall finding that was kind of an aha for me, is that if you split the world into kind of trading partners, so you think like the USMCA, which is the replacement of NAFTA, like basically North American trading. You've got the EU, you've got the GCC, you've got APAC, you've got BRICS, you've got all these different kind of relationships that go on. And one of the things that you find is within those trading partner relationships, you either have countries that have high talent, high human capital availability, but also high kind of cost of doing business.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have other or like areas of the world which have easier cost of doing business. They're actually very favorable environment in terms of interest rates and tariffs and those types of things, but low human capital, low talent availability, and no one scores favorably. We had four different kind of meta or macro definitions of like how you might think about the labor market. In each region, the best ones only have two that are favorable. And so it's essentially you have to pick your poison in terms of you've got high talent, high infrastructure in terms of like, access to internet and those types of things. And it was just really fascinating because I think everybody assumes like it made a lot more sense why we moved into a globalized world. Is if you're thinking about things like comparative advantage and you say, okay, one region of the world or one country or one area might have a comparative advantage on one component, and the whole entire world can benefit from that comparative advantage. But as you kind of go through this like decoupling or de-risking that appears to be going on at the moment, you actually lose that comparative advantage, and everyone loses, not just that one country, and nobody is a universal winner. Nobody scores well on everything. And so this notion that one country can kind of operate independent of everyone else and do everything for themselves seems to be, from at least the labor market perspective, a little bit of an illusion. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about any of that stuff, but it was very fascinating.
I'm curious. I guess it is the thought that I have. Because in international business, we talk a lot about, is this the end of the era of globalization? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we kind of come back with, well, there might be conversations about kind of greater nationalism and all that, and retrenching into domestic markets. But the reality is exactly as you described. We are so embedded in different, in other countries that I don't think from a multinational organization perspective, the companies at the company level, we're seeing it as much. I don't know. I mean, you have the data. You would be much closer to it than
we
I would.
did look into that question. I had the hypothesis going into this that over the last few years, you probably would have seen a decrease in the term. The technical term is labor arbitrage. This is essentially for multinational companies moving operations from one place to another that may be more favorable to conducting business. We thought we would see a decrease. We've actually seen an increase. And so it's fascinating that while all of this is going on geopolitically, the expected from a labor market perspective, outcome is actually the inverse of what is happening.
Right. And I believe that like that's the trend we've been seeing in international business. Like the more the noise we hear about end of globalization, but quietly companies are still kind of at it and doing it and building out globally. So.
Well, we cited some of the org dynamic stuff in the research, so you can kind of take that to the bank. But do you want to join me in Cole's Corner, Paula?
Sure.
Welcome to Cole's Corner. Okay.
Remember.
If you weren't a practitioner, author, or academic, what would you have done with your career?
Oh, what I have done with my career? I don't know. Maybe advertising. Probably because I've started watching Mad Men, and I'm all in. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the creative process of advertising.
Well, okay. With it, because actually not to I went through that phase in like November, December, so I'm coming off my Mad Men rewatch. What part of the show resonates the most with you? I'll share what does it for me too.
So truthfully, I just, this is my first time out watching it, so
Oh, okay.
I'm not rewatching it, and I'm only into, I think, the second season. Um, but frankly, I'm just alarmed. I keep projecting myself into the 1950s and saying, I wonder what I would have been
Hmm.
like in the 50s. Would I have been more like this one or that one, or would I bought into, 1950s housewife? Like, I just, you're we're socialized by the context of the generation we're born into, so it's hard to, like, kind of imagine yourself back then. But I'm having some fun with it. How about you? Where
Well,
were
I
you
just
with?
love the pitches. Like I literally fast forwarded through the show because I watched it before. And by the way, after like the I think it's fourth season, quality falls way off, so you can
Oh,
drop
good
it
to
there.
know.
But I just literally like I'll fast forward to the pitches. I love watching them. Like they're just fascinating to me because I think it's like the psychologist to me. You
Yeah.
realize like how they're utilizing different kind of you know things that we know about human psychology, but to do like mass marketing, and it's very fascinating.
And maybe that's why, I mean, we both are psychologists. Maybe that's why it was attractive. So,
Yeah, absolutely. All right. What's the place you've never been to that you most like to go and why?
hmm. Whew. So I've had this great international career, and I've been to, like, lots of places around the world. So I'm going to answer it in a weird way. I love going back to places and seeing it with fresh eyes.
Hmm.
Like, for example, this is
Yeah.
just one coming up. The last time I was in India, in, let's say, Delhi, was the late '90s. Yeah, so it was a long, long time ago. In 2 weeks, I'm going to Delhi for a wedding,
Oh,
and it's I'm so excited. I mean, I'll go and see some of the things I've seen, but, like, you're seeing it through fresh eyes, and you're doing something entirely different, and I'm different, and
yeah.
just, like, so I'd say almost anywhere I've ever been, doing it again.
Yeah.
I've not spent any time in the Middle East. I think I'd love to see some of the countries in the Middle East because they're so rich with history and culture and
Yeah.
great great experiences.
I bet you Delhi is going to be like night and day, like unrecognizable. You
Yeah.
know, that's going to be wild. Well, I hope you have a good trip.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. If you were a character in any book, TV show, or movie, who would you be and why?
Oh my gosh, this is going to sound so superficial.
It's
But
okay.
the
Be
one that
super.
immediately came to mind, don't laugh. Carrie Bradshaw in Sex in the City.
Okay,
Because
that is
think
funny.
about it. She has I don't know if you've ever watched the show, but her wardrobe is all fantastic, like couture and fun and interesting and the whole bit. She seems to have endless energy to go out with friends every night and go out for these fabulous dinners and do all these really cool things, and somehow can afford to live in Manhattan as a writer. And I just think
Mhm.
it'd be so much fun writing a dating column while, living in Manhattan and being able to afford it.
Yeah.
That is I think I should have answered like something,
It's like they have those tropes about like the HGTV shows where it's like, a couple like the husband, is a woodworker and the wife, is a stay-at-home mom. Their budget, $3 million. And it's like, how do you guys afford this?
right,
It's
right.
wild.
I think, yeah, I just don't think as a writer, I don't know, maybe your books sell better than mine do, but I
Yeah,
don't know how
exactly.
you can afford to live in Manhattan on that. But
All right. I got one big question for you.
uh-oh.
The world is really complicated at the moment.
Yes.
What can multinational organizations do with their talent to gain a competitive advantage in a rapidly changing world?
Ooh, yeah, I mean, it would, so for me, it's help people get comfortable being with each other.
Yeah.
Really, you can get pretty far as an organization if you're if your employees are able to build trust quickly,
Mm-hmm.
and there are it's a short list of ways that trust can be built in different, just as humans and in different countries.
Yeah.
So I would say, as a multinational, I would be teaching the skills to help people communicate, build trust, rely on one another, because that's when things start to move a whole lot faster.
Yeah. Do you have you found that there's any ways to do that more or less effectively right now?
A lot of our client organizations, a lot of them don't want to hear it, but it's giving people face time. A
Hmm.
little bit of face time goes a long way in terms of establishing trust, finding similarity. We spend, and I do not mean to offend any of your listeners
Yeah.
or organizations that did this, but we spent way too much time on implicit bias testing and
Mm-hmm.
sharing unconscious bias, and the data on that are basically saying, you kind of are doing more harm than good
Yeah, we
here.
covered that like
Oh,
two or
you
three
did?
years
Okay,
ago, and that was
good.
like a hot topic. Is like there's just a ton of research that showed that there was like zero or negative efficacy on doing that.
Yeah, and you had people like me out there going, "I beg of you, stop!" Like
Yeah.
you're because the way we become great with one another is by talking to one another. And if you're flagging that individuals have biases, the last thing I wanted to do is suggest to someone that I'm biased. So what do? You avoid them. So it actually was doing quite a bit of harm
Yeah.
globally.
Well, I wonder. So I know we mentioned, global mobility and expats earlier in the conversation. It seems like that trend is like, I don't know, maybe it was COVID that killed it a little bit or something. I don't know, but it doesn't seem like that is as prevalent now as it used to be. Do you think that that might be a contributing factor to lower trust as well?
I mean, the individuals who were great at being
Hmm.
expats, and not all of them were great at being expats, but those who were great could establish a lot. They were great bridges and could help establish a lot of trust. I think it can be done. You don't need a 2.2 year assignment in order to establish trust. You need a great opportunity for FaceTime when people can really interact and sort of find something in common, build a little bit of a relationship,
Yeah.
rely on one another, share resources, something that ties that bind humans.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to take 2.2 years.
Sure, sure.
Hi, I'm Stephen Rothberg,
And I'm Jeanette Leeds.
and together we're the co-hosts of the High Volume Hiring Podcast.
Are you involved in hiring dozens or even hundreds of employees a year? If so, you know that the typical sourcing tools, tactics, and strategies, they just don't scale.
Yeah, our bi-weekly podcast features news, tips, case studies, and interviews with the world's leading experts about the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to high volume hiring.
Make sure to subscribe today.
Well, let's do some what am I reading? Every
Okay.
time I invite an academic on, I always have to cover something related to academia because I can't talk to my practitioner friends about it. And I see these things from afar, and I'm like, do these get any kind of traction? So the first article I've got from Information Policy is it's called "Is It Time to Slow Down?"
Okay.
And so I guess there is this new movement that has come out about slow work and just doing things more slowly generally in life. And so they decided to kind of apply this theory to calling the slow professor. And they're saying that the pace of academia and publishing has gone up incredibly fast over the last few years. Getting people to even serve as journal editors or being on editorial boards is more and more difficult because of the time constraints that people are under just to kind of publish or perish. And so I just wondered with you kind of conceptually, have you seen any traction for slow academia or slowing things down or anything along those lines? And do you think it would be beneficial in kind of the management space for that to be a relevant topic?
Ooh, it's a good thought. I've not seen it. I remember. I mean, when I came out in the '90s, it was like you went into academia to have a more balanced lifestyle. I went back, this was years, 10, 15 years ago. I went back to Penn State to give a talk at my alma mater, and I heard PhD students saying, "Oh no, we don't want to go into academia. There's no work-life balance." And I'm like, "What?" So yeah, I think the requirements to be, especially in an R1 institution, so the institutions that require us to do a lot of research, it's gotten intensely competitive, and the expectations have become off the chart. Things that, like, for me to get multiple job offers in business schools, I just needed like one kind of third level publication and I got a bunch of great job offers. Now students are coming in, newly minted PhDs with multiple top tier articles. I mean, that's the kind of thing that I think I may have gotten tenure off of, So I think it's gotten so intense and so competitive, and it's kind of like creating some bad behavior, frankly. So I don't know.
Hold that thought on the bad behavior. We'll come back.
Oh, okay. Well, I'd love to see us slow down, because it also, we're a profession that we do our best when we can kind of think through ideas and talk to each other. Yeah. There's just not a lot of airtime for that, to just think.
That's really what I wanted to ask, is because it seems like all the incentives are set up to see the outcome that you're seeing. Is it even possible to slow down with the incentives set up the way they are? And is there a better way or a different way that it could be going?
Boy, I mean, I have ideas of better and different ways of doing this. I just don't think any of them will ever happen. No, I mean, we are so hyper focused on the same 20 journals, if you will, and getting into them, where we're not competing against just, like, I'll make up, if from an IO Psych perspective, we're not competing against 9 other IO Psych programs or whatever, people come out of them. Now it's the entire world that you're competing against for the same number of journal spaces and journal issues per year. So I think the competition has become so intense that I don't see it. I don't see any advantage that anyone would have to slowing down in this system as it's structured. Now, if academia changes, like I think it's going to, there might be a much greater focus on assurance of learning and teaching. Maybe we might do a little bit more around creativity and seeing what students are gaining and what's enduring past the classes that they're taking. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to go deep dive into higher ed, but there are some things that could change. I just don't see academics slowing down if they have to compete at an R1 level. I wish they did.
No, that makes sense. Well, let's come back then somewhat to what you were talking about a second ago, just some of the questionable practices that are going on. So Paul Spector has written an article recently called Questionable Research Practices in Top Management Journals. And he cites some research that's happened recently where some research from a variety of institutions, I'm not going to name them all because it's going to take a while, looked at people who did their dissertations and then published those dissertations after the fact into top management journals. And so the theory here is that while you're doing your dissertation, there's really no motivation to do things like harking and p-hacking and some of these other questionable research practices that have come up, because really the goal is to demonstrate that you have the ability to do, this level of world-class research and really, go deep and sell your soul to the devil to finish your dissertation. But then once it gets published in journals, what happens to the level of, the number of statistical positive findings that are found? And one of the things that they found is they compared eight most prestigious journals. And what they found was pretty shocking. If you look at the top journals, more than 2/3 of the articles showed evidence of harking, and 3/4 of the articles showed evidence of p-hacking. So again, the same study, but published in a different journal once they moved into the journal space. Had you seen this article, and What are your thoughts on this? Because I used to hit on this pretty often a few years ago when the open science movement came out. Haven't talked about it as much lately, but I do try to bring these topics up when I'm talking to an academic.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, it's not at all surprising. I was a journal editor for years, and we don't publish null results, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we should. I think it's a great way to advance science, and we probably would know much more scientifically if we could show what when our hypotheses didn't work. But those don't get published, so it's not surprising at all. And I'm not. There's another way, though.
Yeah.
I think, and I would hope that academia kind of moves there. But I'm
this really, we started on this pathway a few years ago. We had Dr. Marcus Cadet on, and he made the statement that he thinks like over a third of academic articles that are published are outright fraud.
Oh my God. Oh,
he had some data to back it up, and I was like, oh my goodness. And so you see things like, the p hacking, the harking, and all of that, and you say, what percentage of this is actually, real bad behavior? And again, there's a lot of these like high profile cases of people conducting academic fraud. And so I think it's just really important. Like you mentioned, you try to be a good scientist practitioner. And I think you are probably embodying this almost better than anyone, because you are an academic. You do have like your own company where you're practicing what you preach, and you're evangelizing it to the world through books, papers, through podcasts, all of the like. And so I think you're doing an excellent job of it. It seems like it's so critical that we put forward and we incentivize the right behaviors. And if you're not seeing that, it seems like it's almost endemic to the incentives that this is happening.
Oh, it's completely. I mean, you don't get tenure unless you publish in these top tier journals, and you can't keep feeding the beast. And unfortunately, that third, if you imagine if that's really true, if a third of the articles are outright fraud, and then some portion of them are doing the things that Spector's article are like, wow, where do we belong? I mean, that this is breaking my heart as an academic. Frankly, what I wish would happen, and this is really where my career has turned. I haven't collected data in ages, unless it's externally driven. So, like, I think a cool model is academics kind of come up with interesting theory pieces. We have the airtime to really think through what could be happening, and and then put it out there in an accessible way. Hopefully it's usable, and then hopefully that someone or some organization that finds it interesting comes back and says, what, we've got those data to test this. Let's partner to see if this is really happening. Like, to me, that might be how research in the future could unfold without this kind of insane, these insane ways of, bad things that are happening. The last few articles that I've done that have had data, they've kind of gone in that direction where I was presenting something with usually two practitioners, and someone's like, I've got some data like that. Do you really want to? And that's cool. That's exciting. So it's a model. I don't know that it's one that's out there very much.
Absolutely. Well, the last article I've got for you, different feel to it. This was from a post highlighted by Tomasz Chamara-Permuzik, where he found an article in Acta Psychologica called "Individual Differences and Entrepreneurial Tendencies: The Impact of Self-Employment and the Dark Triad," which I thought was super interesting. And one of the things that they found by assessing a lot of different entrepreneurs is an entrepreneur is more likely to be male, be self-employed, have greater openness to experience, conscientiousness, narcissism, and that accounted for 41% of the variability in entrepreneurship. And some of the other things that they found is that dark triad traits enhance the entrepreneurial spirit, specifically psychopathy and narcissism predicted entrepreneurial tendencies, and narcissism emerges as a key predictor beyond big five traits. So I found this one to be fascinating. And he says, what do Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, and Larry Ellison all have in common? They're essentially unemployable people unless they had started their own companies. So I don't know. What do you think about this one, Paula?
Wow. Are they unemployed? Yeah, I guess they might be. I think it's all about context, right? So they had skills that were right for the idea of, shaking up an industry or really changing the course of a field. And you need to have a little, I would imagine, some real, hubris, at least, I don't know about narcissism, but at least hubris to believe that the vision that you have for the world can happen.
Yeah.
And that's skill. I don't know that will work everywhere or in every context. So I'm a context person. I really believe that, humans can succeed within different contexts, and there's a place for people who kind of are willing to go to an extreme, or the phrase I want to say is don't care what others think.
Yeah.
And that's crossing over into the narcissism thing. But you almost, again, I'm not advocating, I don't want hate mail, but you almost need a little of that in order to really change an industry in a big way. But I could see, it's not going to fit if you're in a traditional role, but it's context.
One of my common riffs amongst my friend group, I don't think I've ever shared on the podcast before, is that sociopaths need jobs too, right? They got to eat, they got mortgages, right? And so they got to have something to do. And if nobody's going to hire them, maybe they have to start their own company to put, food on the table. But I also have a riff where I say that there's a disproportionate number of them, probably in like intelligence services, but also in HR. And so, yeah.
And in academia.
Yep.
I mean, we don't fit. I was joked around about, like, if you go into a faculty meeting, whenever we have like an executive leader who wants to be a professor for a few years or whatever, and they come into a faculty meeting, they're always blown away that these meetings, like, we will spend, I am not kidding, we had 3 meetings about a water cooler, about whether we needed to get rid of, like, those water bubbler things.
Yeah.
3 meetings.
Too many meetings. Yeah.
20 PhDs sitting around discussing a water cooler 3 times.
Oh, that is the downfall of modern academia, if I've never heard a better explanation. So, Paula, this has been fantastic having you on as a guest today. You're just a wealth of insights. Is there anywhere where people can find you or any of the other resources that we mentioned on the podcast?
Yeah, certainly. I think probably the easiest, if you can spell my name, you can find me. I'm pretty easy to find out there. But skillify.com is a good spot. But the only strange thing with Skillify is it's spelled SKIILIFY. So helping culture see eye to eye, helping people see eye to eye. So skillify.com.
Well, I just assumed that was some lawyer that made that decision, so from a cease and desist or something. But
no, that was a me thing, not realizing that when you need reading glasses, the 2 I's and the L all sort of blend together.
Okay. Well, nice. Well, you've been fantastic. Thanks for joining me, Paula. You've been listening to Directionally Correct with your host, Cole Napper, and today's guest, Paula Caligiuri. Thanks for joining me, Paula.
Thanks, Cole.